Hello and welcome. This is James from the DSL Imager channel. Tonight I'm going to show you the processing workflow I used for my latest image of the Soul Nebula. I did use narrowband filters, so this is in a classic Hubble or SHO color palette. Now for this picture I used the Askar 65 PHQ and the ZWO ASI 294 mono. I did use bin 2 pixels. I kind of went over that in one of my previous videos. The main advantage with going with the bin 2 pixels in this scenario is increasing the signal to noise ratio. Now after collecting data with this image, I did switch over to bin 1. So do look forward to a comparison video showing this camera at this short focal length running bin 1 and bin 2. But for now, this picture is all bin 2. Now here in the weighted batch pre-processing script, you can see the total integration time is 28 hours and 22 minutes. And you can see that we've got more HA than anything else. The reason S2 is so low here is I ended up tossing a lot of S2. I had actually collected more S2 subs than any other filter. A lot of these subs were taken with the moon out, and when this moon was full, its proximity to the Soul Nebula, it was just too close, and I ended up tossing all those files. And I'll show a comparison between a file with the moon and without the moon. Okay, so let me close this, and here we go. We can see the HA, so just over 10 hours. Now the framing is not great. Ideally, if I were to shoot this, I would have rotated the camera angle and gotten more of the nebula in there. But the reason it's like this, the main reason it's like this is because this image is one of many that I'm shooting in the same night, and I needed to keep the camera angle in the same position. So this target actually started out as kind of a parking target when the moon was out. Ironically, I ended up tossing all those S2 subs like I mentioned before, but that's the reason for this camera angle. Now it does offer a couple of possibilities, and I'll get into that near the end of the video. I did want to show really quick the S2 subs. So this one, September 1st, with the moon out, I mean you can barely see anything in there. And this one here, September 19th. Right, so this was 03:49, so 3:49 in the morning, and this is 10:35 in the evening. And I don't think there was any moon out when I shot this here. So S2, same filter. These are 6 nanometer astronomic filters, and yeah, I mean, you can barely see a little bit here, but I just figure with all of this terrible contrast here that it would have just hurt the image overall. So that's why I didn't include these in the final stack. Alrighty, let's take a look at the rest of the data. So here's what the S2 data looks stacked, and here's the O3. So Soul Nebula is a really cool target, and it's a really great narrowband target because it's got a lot of O3 in there, and it even has a decent amount of S2. Of course, the HA, that's got so much signal, it's insane. Alright, and now a cautionary tale. While I was processing this image, I actually ran out of hard drive space, and it ended up corrupting some of the files in the PixInsight swap folder. So because of that, I'm not going to be able to go through the history of the pictures. It's completely corrupted them. So up here, right, these are not working. All these pictures. This is the initial channel combination of the S2, O3, and HA, and I was working on this image when I got an error, a corruption warning from PixInsight. The warning advised me to back up, save the project and exit PixInsight, which I tried to do, but it couldn't exit because it was saying it was missing a swap file. And all of this is because I ran out of hard drive space on the drive that the swap folders were in. So we won't be able to do that. Fortunately, I do have I made a lot of copies along the way, so I'll be able to talk and discuss. You're just not going to be able to see it step by step as it evolved. Alright, so what you see here is just using the LRGB combination tool to combine S2, O3 and HA, S2 in the red channel, HA in the green channel, and O3 in the blue channel. After doing that, I ran a dynamic background extraction, and we can see that here. Well, okay, so I ran dynamic background extraction, then I ran blur exterminator, then I removed the stars, and that's what you see here. Now, maybe I could just kind of demo what I did here, because at this stage it was mostly curves, and I've shown this before in some of my other videos, but one of the ways that I try to get contrast, let me see, is this stretched? Not stretched yet. Okay, so actually before I even did anything with curves here, after I removed the stars, I would have stretched this image. And this is actually this here. And so, yeah, this is where it all went kaput, and I can't see anything. So let's grab this one. I'll make a copy of it. Now, as far as stretching, all I used was the screen transfer function. So we're using the screen transfer function. We're doing an unlinked auto stretch. Then we grab this little corner, drop it in the histogram tool, then grab this from the histogram tool, drop it on our image, and now it's stretched. And it's giving us a white screen because it applied a stretch, and we have the auto stretch still enabled. So I just hit F12 on the keyboard, and now we're back to this. And then I think, if I remember correctly, I hit it with SCNR tool. And yeah, there you go, 53%. Must have been thereabout that I hit it. So what we're doing is we're removing some of this green. Now it looks like most of it's gone, but it's not, and the green that I achieved in the final image is still in there. After this, it's basically taking out curves and creating contrast. Now, we can see some structure on these sides here. And this was one of the things that I was thinking about. I was actually tempted to maybe go deeper, because we definitely see some structure out here. It's very faint, and maybe if I spent, I don't know, double the integration time, I might be able to pull some of this out. But as it was, I just looked in here, and to create some contrast, I click on a dark area, and then over there on the curves transform tool, you can see where the signal is. So like this here, I might want to brighten up, and this here we want to darken, and so I can just grab this corner here, pull down a little bit, and then pull up just a little bit more. And I'm doing a tight. The 2 points are very close together as opposed to far apart, what you normally see, because I find that that does a nice job of giving good contrast in these darker areas. You see how these darker dust lanes are starting to pop out, and these really faint areas of what's hydrogen gas is starting to show up a little bit there. Right, and so that's kind of an example of the kind of work that I would do here. Now, I'll deal with these later, but I did deal with them. So this is leftover signal from bright stars. After I've gotten further along and I've gotten the colors closer to what I want, the way I would deal with this is there's two different ways. I can either use clone stamp in PixInsight, or I can use the healing brush in Photoshop. I think the healing brush does a little bit of a cleaner job of it, but I'll demo clone stamp really quick. I mean, as far as when to take care of these, I could have done it now. I could have done it later. I think maybe getting it done earlier sometimes helps because the work that you're doing in this area is also impacting this. But doing it later doesn't seem to cause too much of a problem either. All right, so clone stamp, I just click in there. I give it a large radius. I think 200 is what we want. Now, the way clone stamp works is that you're going to click at a reference point, and then it's just going to clone it over there, right? So this clone stamp doesn't work really too well, if you're trying to do this in the nebula, because it's going to copy, all this structure, and we don't want that. But in an area where there's almost no structure or no visible structure, the harm that it can cause on the image is limited. So I'm going to use this area just as an example. So I'm holding the left control button, clicking in. It puts the reference point, which is the X, and now I can, put it here if I wanted to, but I'm just going to place it right over there and click, and there. So hit the checkbox to save it and close it. Now, if you look close, you can still see a little bit, but it's far less noticeable than it was before. And you can always adjust with the circle size and the hardness of the circle and kind of tweak it. But really, this is just a demo of that. Let's see. Now, I probably worked with some masks, and the masks are probably still here. Yeah, so this is it's a custom mask, and it should be mostly yellow. And what I'll do is I'll actually make a range mask of this. Let's see. Yeah. So this is a targeted mask. And what I was probably doing here is trying to move this yellow to red. And so there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can remove green, right? You can increase red. I find it's actually, when I pull back on green, it's a good idea to add some red, because when you're pulling back on green, you're not just impacting the color, you're also like darkening the image. And so by raising red a little bit, you're kind of counteracting that loss of signal with the green. The other thing you can do is you can go to this CIE component and just move the green towards the red. You got to be careful with this one though. It can, yeah. Got to be careful with that. So you can do all three or whatever. You can increase saturation, although I try to leave saturation for after I'm done with everything else. Alright, so anyway, let's pull back on the green. Increase the red. Pull this up again. And there we go. Oh, too much. Yeah, I was kind of going for the for kind of the goldish orange, almost fire flame look. For the blues that are in here, well, we definitely want to remove the green, and the question is, how much green do we want to leave back in there? Most folks seem to just eliminate all the green, and my regulars know that I actually like green. Green happens to be my favorite color. Even my pickup truck's green. So I like to leave a hint of green in the image. And so there should be a blue mask in here. Probably this one. Yeah. And there we go. So this is a range mask that I made off of this color mask. Oh, and I showed this a couple videos ago, but there's a new color mask script, and this tool works great because it really lets you dial in the colors. It's showing this because I'm referencing this mask, but normally it lets you dial in the colors really well. Alright, so we'll throw this in here. So you can see the way I made this mask, it left some of that green edge, which is what I'm looking for, because I like the green to act as a transition between the yellows, the reds, and the blues. So we'll invert that mask, and then here I'll hide the mask. And then in this case, I think I just use SCNR tool again. And yeah, there we go. You can get a really, really rich blue color in there. But you got to be careful, right? You see how it's getting more blue, and now it doesn't blend well with the green that's left in there. So yeah, just different ways to work it. Alright, so anyway, after I did all my curves work and mask work in PixInsight, I got to this stage. And then I took the image from this stage and I went into Photoshop and I played around mostly with the camera raw filter, and I ended up with this. Now here we are in Photoshop. I just want to show you really quick what I'm doing in Photoshop. So I'm going to the camera raw filter, and all the work that I'm doing is mostly under basic, and the primary sliders that I'm hitting is this dehaze, so we can see what the dehaze does. The clarity, you got to be careful. Clarity in particular, I mean, this initially looks kind of cool, but once you get it out of Photoshop, at least to my eye, it looks overcooked. I mean, it's a personal taste. And then texture, it's like sharpening the image, so again, you can go too far with it. Now, if I recall correctly, I think I pulled back on the blacks, but I pulled up on the shadows because I didn't want this area to get too dark. I mean, again, you can see there is structure in here. So I wanted to kind of preserve that. I don't believe I did anything to exposure, but I may have increased contrast a little bit. I mean, so you can increase contrast or you can play with the blacks, whites, shadows, and highlights, and it kind of does the same thing. And then increase the vibrance a bit and maybe saturation a little bit. So I mean, that's pretty close to where I got it. All right, so let's cancel all changes. Yep. Let's get back in the PixInsight. So yeah, basically I got here, I stretched the stars. Let's see if we compare this to the original, right? There's a lot more stars. In this particular image, especially with the colors and everything, I wanted to keep the stars de-emphasized quite a bit. So I didn't stretch them all the way. This is what we got. And then using Pixel Math to combine them. And I believe this is the first combination. Now, if you guys are regulars on my YouTube channel, you know I use that community tab. I think this is the picture that I posted on the community tab. Now, I did go and tweak this image a few times. I ended up saving this version as my version 1, and I ended up with a version 4. So there was a few more iterations of this processing. Things that I was looking at, I felt like the green here, this green band, was too strong and too distinct. So I wanted to dial the green back. Shocking to hear from my mouth, but you know, I like green, but within reason. So I needed to dial that green back. Also, the background, I wanted to have it a little bit darker, and I wanted to increase the sharpness in here. I felt like the sharpness, I mean, granted, this is with those, what are they, 4.6 micron pixels on bin 2, 65 millimeter scope, so I'm not exactly going to pull out a whole lot of detail. But I felt like this was still a little softer than I preferred. And what I did use, I did hit the image with Noise Exterminator 2 times. I did also use Unsharp Mask. And so the final image, I believe it's on this workspace. Yep, here it is. So, dial back that green, but it's still in there. It looks pretty good. I'm really happy with the reds and the oranges in here. There's not a whole lot of yellow, and it is a little bit more detailed. I mean, again, I'm only going to get so much detail with this setup. It's really a wide field rig. But overall, I think this one came out good. The colors in particular, I'm quite happy with. So now I have a little bit of a quandary here. It's like what to do. It's a little bit of a shame that because of the framing of this image, that just trim the top of the nebula off and the bottom. We're missing a little bit, so we didn't quite get the whole thing. We are getting some fainter details out here, which is kind of cool to see. You don't often see this area in here. So it's like, what should I do? Should I just leave this and just move on? Should I get more time and see if I can pull this out? I think to pull this out and get it to a meaningful level, similar to how this area looks right here, it would probably take 2 or 3 times the amount of integration time. So do I really want to, commit that kind of time on this shot? The other question is, what about doing a mosaic? Now, when I did set the framing for this, I did look ahead enough that if I wanted to do like a 3-panel mosaic, I could get all the way and get most of the Heart Nebula in there. But, I don't know. I was a little iffy about it because of how much the moon impacted the S2 data. And when you have bad gradients or brightness difference in your images, trying to get them to match up well in a mosaic is a challenge. Part of me thinks, maybe I should just leave it and maybe revisit after getting a larger camera. A full frame sensor would look really nice in this area. So, what do you guys think I should do? I think I'm going to leave it and move on. I can always come back with a different setup if I want to. Okay, so with that, don't forget to like and subscribe, and clear skies.